Okay, guys. Hello and welcome to a little bit on the stock market. And this is in reference to how the Great Depression started as a result, not exclusively, but certainly a major part of it was the stock market crash. And perhaps the two biggest things that led to it. One was buying on margin, and the other was speculation, which we'll talk about in a second. So, at the time, people believed that the stock market was the greatest thing ever. That all you had to do was put a little bit of money in and wait a little while, and inevitably, your investment would increase and you would make money. And as people looked around, there were some stocks that were not doing so well, but for the most part, people believed, and whether it's true or not isn't necessarily important. It's the belief. People believed that this was a way to make easy money. And so even if people didn't have a lot of money, they said, I don't want to be left out. Everyone else is making all this money, so I better see what I can do. And so people who didn't even have money would borrow money to invest in the stock market. And you'd say, well, that's maybe a little bit risky. And it was. But as long as the stock increased in value, everything was fine. This happened for a lot of stocks. It would increase in value and everyone was happy. But then eventually, and this can happen for many, many different reasons, stocks begin to lose value and banks started to recall their loans. Now, if someone was unable to repay the loan, their stock was liquidated, which means it's forced to be sold. And when you sold with sorry when you sell the stock and it says, hey, you have to sell it now. If your stock is, let's say, not doing very well, it's on a downturn, and you might have paid $100 for that stock, but right now it's only worth $50. You have to sell it. You can't say, oh well, let's wait another week or two and the stock will go back up and maybe it'll be 80 or 90 or maybe even 100 and we won't have to worry about it. No, you have to sell it right now at whatever the stock value is. And so if it's only worth $50 and you bought it for 100 and you have to sell it right now, then you're going to lose $50, and so is the bank, and that is the real big problem. And so it resulted in a loss for the bank and a huge debt for the individual, which the individual obviously had, or not obviously, but in most cases had no real way of paying off. And so when you use someone else's money to invest and it doesn't work out, not only does the person you borrow the money from, in this case the bank, lose money, but also you now owe more money to that person. And what makes it even worse, and this is something that we might not be aware of, and if you think about it, it does make sense. When you get paid or you have a check or something like that, and you put it in the bank doesn't take your money and keep it in a separate little pile for whenever you happen to come in. They'll have it ready, to give to you. The bank takes all the money that people deposit into the bank and they loan it out to other people. That's how they make money. They loan your money and parts of your money to other people, and in most cases, these loans, usually are okay. Maybe they're loaning money for someone to buy a house or a car, or invest in business, or could be anything. But in the case of buying stocks on margin, they were loaning other people's money to someone else to buy stock. And when it didn't work out, the bank lost money. The individual ended up owing money. But also, when the person who deposited their money in the bank, he comes up and says, "Hey, it's time for me to make my withdrawal now." And the bank manager looks at him and says, "Well, that money. Well, we're actually we're all out of money because we made so many bad loans." Now, this would be very rare if it were, something that didn't happen often. If people weren't borrowing money from every possible source, but unfortunately they were. And if one person or two loans or three loans, or even if a few loans go bad, that's not a big deal. Banks are already prepared for that. That's why they charge interest, because they can make money. But when tons and tons and tons of people's investments go bad, that's when it's a disaster, and the bank could literally run out of money. And someone coming up who maybe never even invested in the stock market, worked hard their whole life, and says, "Hey, I'm getting ready to retire or whatever. I'm here to withdraw all my money." And the bank looks at them and says, "Well, yeah, sorry, we don't have that money anymore." And it forced banks to close down. People lost their life savings, even if they didn't invest a penny in the stock market. Well, another thing that really drove this sort of desire for people to want to invest was speculation. Um, you know, if you think back, and I know it's a long time now, over 10 years ago, but if you are old enough to remember, in 2007, around there, people just thought that real estate prices would continue to rise in 2007, just like people thought stock prices would continue to rise in 1929. And if you remember 2007 in the real estate market, before that, I'm not exaggerating. Home prices were literally going up maybe like $500 to $1,000 a day. You could wake up at the beginning of one month in 2006, 2005, around then, uh, one day, and then at the end of the month, your house is worth $30,000 more, and that's how much prices were going up. And so people, again, same thing as stocks, they wanted to get in on it. Wow, stocks are gonna keep on going up, so our housing prices are gonna keep on going up, 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 and eventually, it reached a point where people decided, paying $600,000 for a two-bedroom condo is probably not worth it. And then, of course, the market went back down. Exact same thing happened with the stock market. People were speculating. They were guessing. They said, I think this is going to happen. And when it happened, it was great. But when it went the other way, the market went down, it was terrible. And the main thing is that, there was some evidence, but there really was little or no evidence oftentimes to support their position. More like, wow, well, everyone else's house is going up, so I better do it. Everyone else's stock is going up, I better get in on it. Same sort of thing. And again, it's that thing that we were just talking about, the eagerness of people not wanting to be left out, especially this massive profit encouraged them to take part in the stock market, whether or not they could afford it. Well, unfortunately, we know that the economies go in cycles, and the economy began to decline. Consumer confidence refers to how you feel about the economy right now, but also how it's going to be in the future. Are you confident enough where you can make a purchase, and if the economy takes a minor turn, that you'll still be able to uh, be okay. You won't have to borrow money, you won't have to sell anything away. You can still afford to make this large purchase. That's what consumer confidence generally refers to. And when the economy is in flux, people generally lack confidence in the economy. It makes sense. We're not really sure where the economy is going to go, so I'm going to hold off on investing really until there's more solid information, until I really know where the economy is going. And that caused people to hesitate to purchase anything. Of course, obviously food, things that you have to purchase. And this led directly to a decline for demand. Now, decline demand, we start to get, this circle, this vicious circle. That lack of consumer confidence leads to a decline in demand. And when a consumer demand, goes down, factory owners start to cut back on production. Hey, why make stuff if there's no demand for it? We're just wasting money. And of course, less production means fewer workers on the job, which meant reduced employment, meant even less money available to spend for people to buy. And retailers had large quantities of unsold goods due to decreased demand. And we know that when the demand is low and the supply is high, we know the prices go down, 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 even further depressing workers and companies' earnings. Well, this all leads to some real hardships. Now, don't think that every single person lived like this. There were still people living normal lives, but there were significant numbers of people, millions and millions of people, who really did live very, very difficult lives. These are absolute real hardships. Especially by the winter of 32, we say as much as one-sixth of the population reached starvation. I mean, this is horrible. Families unable to pay rent, forced from their homes and settled in these ramshackle villages, which were called, Hoovervilles, which, literally, as you can see, these are, just little cardboard houses. We had this new sort of what's called a hobo culture, where people would just jump on a train and move somewhere else because whatever it was right now wasn't going to work. And people even delayed getting married, having children, because it was just such an economic burden. And even what doesn't make any sense to me, but this apparently happened a lot, some men felt like failures for not being able to provide for their families, and for whatever solution, I guess, was to simply, I'm done here. Would walk away and abandon their families. Well, I don't know how that solves the problem, but certainly contribute to the problem. And even older children were told to leave their families as the family could no longer provide for them. So when you say older, we don't mean like 22. We mean like, oh, you're 14, you can go get a job yourself. We have three other kids who are young. They need our help more than you. You're old enough. Beat it, kid. Not that they wanted to, but they just couldn't afford otherwise. Finally, we have farmers and workers. Farmers are producing more because they think, and mistakenly so, but they think, oh man, our profits are down. We might as well just increase more because we can sell more, maybe. Well, we know that farm prices have been steadily declining because production had been steadily increasing because of mechanization. And in order to make up for those profits, the farmers incorrectly produced even more because that the more, if demand stays the same and you increase supply, then the value of that product goes down. And of course, it had the opposite effect: is increased supply forces prices lower, and farmers began to lose their farms to foreclosure to the bank. And workers, since many of them who even had the jobs, they were not very confident in the economy, were really sort of hesitant to spend. And since Americans had less money to spend, manufactured goods continued to decline. Even more workers were laid off, more factories closed, and at the height of the Depression, 25% of the country was unemployed, and it was much higher for minorities, particularly African Americans. I don't have the exact numbers, but African unemployment, I believe, was close to 50%. Women oftentimes were fired to make room for men because the idea was that, well, if you're a woman who's working, you already have a man who's there to take care of you and your family. So we need to give men who are the head of the household, we need to give them jobs so they can support their family. And you don't really need the job as badly, which, of course, as we know, is absolute nonsense. All right. Well, thank you for listening.